said that if we don't, you know, our bond rating is going to go down. But either way, our bond rating is going to go down. Next week, if we raise the national debt, it might settle the markets for a little bit, but it'll make me more pessimistic, because it means we've just licensed them, both sides, to spend more money and have no restraints whatsoever. And therefore, we will continue the process, and what happens? More debt. So we've done all these things that I described in the psychology and political system that we just go along with it, and it encouraged debt. If you had not had a paper money system in the Federal Reserve, members of Congress would continue to spend, because that's how they buy votes. Buy your vote, whatever you want. I'll vote for the appropriations, and they've been reelected for all these years. And then they would not want to tax, or couldn't tax, or they realized there was a limit, so they would borrow, and that would be difficult, but it'd be easier than taxing the people. But then, when you do that, interest rates tend to go up. And everybody knows interest rates going up can hurt an economy. So the system was designed to say, what can we do to hide this for a while longer and continue the process? And that is print the money. And that's why the Federal Reserve is there. And that's what they have been doing. And that perpetuates the problem. So if we do raise the debt limit, it just means we're going to depend on the Fed to create more money. Now, I've worked on that subject for a long, long time. And it was that issue of inflation, inflating the money supply, even in the early 70s, and why we were off the gold standard, and why we should be on it. But it couldn't be done. You cannot do it if your dollar is linked to gold. They can't print the gold. But what would happen then, if the people were demanding the spending and the politicians kept spending and they kept borrowing, interest rates would go up. And I said, the only tool then would have been to cut back on the spending. But that was, it's like a drug. Politicians become addicted to spending and borrowing and inflating. And the sad part about it, in the early stages of that, people seemed to benefit. So over those last 40, 50 years, there was a lot of prosperity. We were very wealthy, and we were still a credit nation, we had credit, we were loaning out. But then it shifted. We became a debtor nation. And now, we still have a lot of prosperity. I mean, we're still a lot out in the streets. But what we have now is based on debt. And this is where the crisis is coming. We have the pressure to spend, the pressure to raise the deficit, and no significant effort to cut, because they see this more as a budgetary problem. As much as I talk about the budget and how important that is secondary to a very important issue, and that important issue has to do with what our country is all about. And that is, what is the purpose of government? We'll never get anywhere if you don't ask the question, what should the purpose of our government be? And my conclusion is, my personal conclusion is, my personal desires, and desires of the founders and the way the Constitution was written, was to preserve liberty. That is what we need. Because if we had our liberties, if we got the government out of our way, out of this effort to fight wars endlessly overseas, out of the way of interfering in our personal lives, out of our way and allowing the market to work, out of the way and get rid of the Federal Reserve's ability to print money out of thin air, believe me, even if we lost all our wealth today, if you had your freedoms back, people willing to work and know they can't go on the dole, I'll tell you what, this country could be up and running again, and we would be able to do it. We have lost confidence in what a free society is all about and an understanding. And it took a long time to give up on it. So it's not going to be easy. But the very good news is that a lot of people are waking up. They're waking up, they are scared, they are concerned, but they're finding answers. Because I have witnessed this over the years. For so many years of talking about this and trying to tell people what they should be concerned about, there were very few people listening or caring, because we were still doing well. They say, well, I'll just borrow more money against my house. I'll buy a new house because the credit is available. And businesses would do that until the reverse had to go back. Instead of pyramiding on debt and fractional reserve banking, it has to unwind. And that is what's happening happening today. And we have lost our understanding and our confidence. The market does work, liberty does work. The Constitution, it's very precise and clear goal, isn't to meddle in your life, isn't to regulate you, it isn't even made to write many laws for you. It was there to limit the power of the federal government, and that's what we ought to be doing, is limiting the power of the federal government. And if you want government, it should be local. The government's responsibility is to provide for a general environment for freedom to thrive. Instead of the government being the counterfeiter and destroying the value of the dollar, its mandate was to guarantee that your money would have value and you would only have gold and silver as legal tender. We'd have a strong national defense rather than pretending that we could go every place in the world getting ourselves into trouble, fighting wars that are undeclared, endlessly, nobody knowing when they're ending. Presidents going to war without even consulting with the Congress. So the people don't get consulted with and have much influence on the congressman. Presidents just go to war. And this is absolutely and totally out of control. And we got into this mess because we have lost respect for the rule of law and for the Constitution. It's been so ignored. So why wouldn't it be, if that's the reason we got to this trouble, if you come to that conclusion, why wouldn't the answer be finding only individuals willing to go to Washington who has a clear understanding of the Constitution and who will stick to their guns and obey the Constitution? That is what I think we need, because today, if we allow a president to go to war just on his own, what other part of the Constitution is valuable? If we allow our Congresses and our presidents to take over the public school system across the country, spending and wasting money, pretending it's going to improve education, and all it does is consume money and education gets worse. I mean, where did they get the authority for the federal government to take over our school system? Where is this authority to have the Department of Education? Why wouldn't the proper position be for a president to get rid of the Department of Education? If we believe in state sovereignty and individual sovereignty and limited federal government, why should we ever condone the movement even away from the federal government and give jurisdictions to international government? Whether it's the UN or the World Bank or the IMF or the WTO or NAFTA or CAFTA or NATO, we don't need all that government. We need to be very much involved in the world through friendship and cooperation and trade, but not politically. And we have drifted a long way because we have not looked carefully at the Constitution. Now, the Constitution doesn't permit it, it's not authorized, but the founders gave us strong advice. Stay out of entangling alliances. Don't get involved in the internal affairs of another nation. Even President Bush, when he was running in the year 2000, he was critical of the Democrats because he said, I'm going to be a president of not nation building and a humble foreign policy. And now we have a doctrine that says we don't have to be attacked. We should go, if somebody looks like they might attack us someday, we're going to attack them. That's starting the wars. And unfortunately, Obama follows that same tack, maybe even more so, because Bush at least came to the Congress and told us he was going to do it. And they say, well, the UN will give me authority. This is Obama's argument. He says, I got the authority of a UN resolution. We're doing it under NATO, and we have to live up to our commitments. I say, what about the commitment of a president to the American people? That's where the commitment has to be. Back to the immediate crisis and what we're talking about, because I don't think many people in the country now say the debt, the massive debt we have and raising the debt limit is of no consequence. It is. And those who argue that it could hurt us by not raising the debt limit, on the short run, that may be true, but on the long run it's much worse, to continue the process. So soon we'll have that vote and we'll decide whether we're going to raise the debt limit or not. But the whole thing that we have to, the important thing that we have to look